Hold on. All right, fine. So now over here, uh, you had this ways of identifying the objects. Okay, the way you identify in Firefox and the way you identify it in Chrome and I just told you, fine. But you identify it in one particular browser, the source code would remain same across all the browsers, right? Okay, so now how do you recognize it? Recognize the objects. Look, first of all, in Selenium, every component, okay, right, whether it is a button, right, or it is a link, right, every component is known as a web element. Okay, don't confuse it with web element of uh, QTP. If you have studied QTP, right, don't compare it with QTP, right? Okay, this Selenium has got a web element interface. If you look at the documentation, right, if you look at the documentation out here, hold on. Out here, web element. Yes, this is web element interface. It represents a generic HTML element. A link is a web element, a button is a web element, a text, normal text on the page is a web element, right? Okay. So if you look at the functions inside this interface, okay, then these functions are the common functions which you can fire on any element on the page. For example, click. Click on a certain element, whether it is a button or a link, it doesn't matter. Okay. Or for example, get the text of the element. Okay. Or is the element enabled or is it displayed? So there are various functions. Right. And once you go to a website, for example, I go to the Gmail website over here. And after going to Gmail website, fine. Suppose I go to Gmail site. Fine. And over here, you have got this input field. Fine. And this input field has got various, this is the tag name and there are various attributes and all. And if you have to find this input field, then you need to write the command driver dot find element. Driver dot find element finds the first web element using the given method on the page. Okay. Now, what do you mean by find element and how do you recognize the elements and all? I'm going to talk about it right now. Fine. Look, finding an element, if you look at this function in the WebDriver interface itself. Okay, hold on. Let me open up the documentation inside Eclipse. And if I go to the WebDriver interface, you will find the function find element inside it. Okay, now finding the element has to be done by certain criteria. That criteria is defined by the by class. Okay, if I click on the by class over here, I'll get the definition of the by class. It's got the various mechanisms which can be used to find an element within a document, within the HTML page. Okay, for example, the various mechanisms are by the class name, by the ID, by the link text, by the name and all everything. So I'll discuss all of them with you. Let's start with the simplest one, by the ID. Okay, so if you are writing in the code driver.find element, you can write by class.id. All these are static functions. By is a class, ID is a static function in the class, and you can define the ID over here. Driver.find element by this ID. Okay, now has the username field got any ID? Yes, it's got an ID. Right. Okay. Now the thing is, the ID is email. Every element, right? Every element cannot have an ID. Fine. Right. So the thing is that you cannot expect that every time I can write driver.find element by the ID email, I will be able to find the element, right? No, right. Okay. So the thing is, if you write driver.find element, okay, this function, if you look at the documentation, this function returns you, hold on, where is the, I'll go back and back and back and back. No, hold on, let me go to the, just a minute, WebDriver interface, yes. Okay, now over here, if you look at the driver.find element function, it returns you the reference of web element interface, right? Okay, right. So the web interface, web element interface reference will be returned by the driver.find element command. You need to import web element. The interface reference is returned by driver.find element command. Okay, and you can write over here email ID field. What do you want to do with it? You want to type into something. So the send keys is the function. I can type something inside this email ID field. Okay, right. So when you run this code, you see that hello is written inside this. Fine. Anybody having any questions?
Yeah, she's Sandeep here.
Yeah.
It's like I have also tried the same code, but you know my codes are going. It's taking like too much time. I mean, first it will write H, then it will type E, then it will type L, L, then O.
Yeah, it types one letter at a time. Yes.
So
Sometimes it is fast, sometimes it is slow.
So, I mean, that depends upon browser, because that is not consistent.
PC configurations. Okay. PC configurations and all that stuff. It depends on a lot of things. RAM and your browser as well. Okay.
Okay.
Sometimes it works slow on some of the machines. I've seen that. Okay. So right now, as I told you, every time you will not find an ID. You have got various other mechanisms as well. For example, name. Name is also supposed to be unique. Fine. Right. For example, for this email ID field, the name is email. Fine. So you can write over here driver.find element by the name as well. Okay, luckily the name and ID are same, but many times it can be different as well. Fine, so if you run this code again, this will work. Okay, right. I hope you are getting my point. Fine, I'm going a little slow on this.
A quick question,
right?
Ashish.
Yeah.
So, if some other browsers are already open, still it is going to open new browser.
Yes.
Okay, so like in QTP, there will not be any problem though multiple browsers open, right?
No.
Okay.
Look, QTP will detect an existing browsers.
Yes.
But Selenium will not.
Okay.
It only recognizes the browser which is opened in the current session. In QTP, you can run the script from between. I can keep my browser open and run it from line number say 32, just taking an instance or example. But in Selenium, you cannot. You have to start the script from the very beginning.
So even in the debugging stage also, like you need to run.
Yes.
Okay.
It has to be started from the very beginning. This consumes a lot of time.
Okay.
Because in QTP, what happens is, if you have got say 3 pages, you can open the browser and start the testing from the third page itself while you are building the script. But in Selenium, you will have to start the script from the whole beginning, go to the first page, then navigate to the next one, and then reach the third one. This is there, but we can't help it. It's a free tool overall. It saves a lot of money.
Okay.
Oh, that's the thing.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Now, moving ahead, right? Moving ahead, we will see, apart from name or ID, okay, what are the other locator mechanisms? Now, suppose by chance there are 2 elements on the page with the same name, email. It should not happen. Name and ID are supposed to be unique. Right. Name and ID are supposed to be unique. Fine. Now, we can have an element over here and an element over here and an element over here, right, which can have the same ID, the same name. So if I write driver.find element, which one will Selenium use? If you look at the documentation for driver.find element, it says that finding the first web element, it's the first one it will use. First one in the sense that let me tell you, when Selenium scans the page, it scans the page like this from left to right side. It starts from the top right side, top left side, and goes to the bottom right side. So in our case, it will use this one. What if you want to use the second or third one? I will talk about that as we proceed with the course. I will be talking about those things as well. Fine. So I hope you got my point over here. Okay, right. Now, what if an element has got no name or nothing? For example, I want to extract the text over here, one account all of Google. If I look at this text, it's inside the h1 tag. It's got no ID. It's got no name, nothing. So over here, what we use is that we use XPaths. Okay, and XPaths are of two types: partial XPaths and complete XPaths. Now, what do you mean by an XPath? For example, you can say that every person has a name. Fine. That name recognizes, or that name is something which is used to identify that person. So similarly, every element on the web page has got an XPath. That XPath will be used to identify that element on the web page. Okay, so for example, I'll tell you, there are two types of XPaths. One is known as the complete XPath, or it's also known as the absolute XPath. And the second one is the partial XPath. Okay, fine. Now, what do you mean by complete XPath and partial XPath? I'll try that. I'll try to make you understand that. If you look at the page source, this is the starting point of the whole HTML page. Okay, right. It starts from the HTML word, and right inside the HTML tag there are two tags, head and body. So you keep on traversing inside the body tag, you keep on traversing, you'll find the h1 tag which holds the statement one account all of Google. Okay, fine. Now if I start traversing, for example, if I write like this is the first tag, HTML tag. Fine, I'll write over here the HTML tag. Inside the HTML tag, you have got head and body two tags. I'm interested inside the the body tag, because eventually my h1 tag is inside the body tag. So inside the HTML tag, you have the body tag. Inside the body tag, you are going to have many tags. I'm interested in this division tag because the h1 tag is inside the division. So I'm traversing down from the base of the document, from the HTML tag to the h1 tag like this. Now inside this division tag, there are three parallel division tags. There are three parallel division tags under this division tag. Okay, I want to go inside the second division tag because the second division tag holds the h1 element. Okay, so I'll write like this slash div 2, that means go inside the second division tag. Fine. Inside the second division tag, you again have got two tags, two division tags. I want to go inside the first division tag, and inside that there is the h1 tag. So you can write over here slash div1 slash h1. Okay, now writing this div1 is not mandatory. Even if I don't write it, by default it is 1. But if you want to go inside the second or third one, you'll have to put it explicitly. So this is how your complete XPath is made. If I take this XPath and if I write it in the code, if I write like this web element heading equals to driver dot find element by the XPath, this, right, I will get the heading and I can print the text. I can write heading dot get text. And when you run this code, the get text command gives you the text, okay, from a web element. And when you run this code, so you will get the text out of, see, I was investigating on Firefox and running on Chrome. It runs fine because page source remains the same across the browsers. So it prints the heading. Okay. Now you don't have to make the complete XPath like this. Okay, you don't have to break your neck traversing. There are tools available. Okay. Make sure you have installed Firebug. I told you to install Firebug, right? On top of Firebug, you can install Firepath. You can go to Google, type Firepath, Firebug. Make sure you do this inside Firefox. Okay, do this in Firefox browser and go to the first link which you get. And in the first link, you have got you'll have this button, add to Firefox, add it over there, and your Firefox will restart. After restarting, when you open Firebug, you will have this Firepath tab over here. In this Firepath tab, select the option Generate Absolute XPath. Okay. Now when you move your mouse over any element, you will have the absolute XPath being displayed for that element over here. You don't have to actually break your head making it yourself. Okay, so you can take the absolute XPaths and you can use them. But usage of absolute XPaths should be avoided. The reason for that is there because if something changes, suppose if the developer he adds a new tag in the very base of the document, then all your XPaths will go for a toss and you'll have to change your complete XPaths in the code and all in your project. So that will cause a problem. Complete XPaths are very accurate. They pinpoint the element. When at times when nothing works, I have seen that complete XPaths, they certainly work. But the problem is if something changes in the application, these XPaths are highly subjected to change. Like you'll have to change them. So changing becomes a problem. Management after the project is made becomes a problem. Fine. So you have to use partial XPaths. Okay, I hope things are clear about complete XPath. Now what is a partial XPath? Partial XPath will always start with a double slash, first of all. For example, on the Gmail page, let's look at the Gmail page. If I look at this, first of all in Firepath, if I uncheck the option Generate Absolute XPath, I will get a partial XPath. If I look at this email ID field, fine. then this is the partial XPath which I get. That is /* ID is email. What does this mean? This means that /* this means all the elements on the page. /* means all elements on the page. /* that is all the elements on the page. Out of all those elements, get me the element whose ID is email. Or to be more precise, you can give the tag name. The tag name of this input field is input. Whatever is starting with the conical bracket, this is known as the tag name. The tag name of this input field is input, and you can write over here the tag name to be more precise. That means out of all the input tags on the page, get me the element with the ID email. You can write anything, either this or this. This one is little more precise. That means out of all the input tags, get me the input tag with ID email. This is a little lesser precise. But it's okay. It doesn't matter. Fine. So I can write in this example. Fine. I can write like this. Driver dot find element by the XPath. I can give the partial XPath of the email ID field. This will represent the web element. Okay. And in one line itself, I can write dot send keys, say hello world. I want to type into it world. So I don't need to declare web element and write 2 lines again and again. Everything can be done in one line as well. The execution starts from the left hand side to the right hand side. First, this command is executed, driver.find element. The web element is found, and then the function send keys is fired on that web element. So if I run this code, you will see that it will go and type hello and then world inside the text field. Send keys command appends the value of the text field. Okay. If you want to clear the value of the text field, then you will have to first write driver.find element by the XPath dot clear. Clear it and then type world into it. Okay, we can type everything in one line. Right. Now moving ahead. Okay, moving ahead.
Ashish, Jigar here. Hello. I have a question. You mentioned about XPath, right? In that there was ID email. What if there are two fields having same ID? Suppose a developer has used same ID for two fields.
Use the first one. As I told a little earlier, like around 10 minutes back. Selenium scans the page like this. If there are two elements with the same ID or something, it will use the first one. If you want to use the second one, I'll tell about it in some time. Okay. In coming class.
Okay.
Now. Right. Now, out here, if I am looking at a website like this, if I look at the XPath for the button add to Firefox, I get an XPath like this. It's a partial XPath. What happens in this case? Okay, in this case we get an XPath like this for this button. The thing is, listen to this carefully. This is the link. This link has got no ID. So it places the link over here and jumps to the one tag above the link, which is the para tag. Para tag has also got no ID. So it keeps the para tag over here and jumps one above one tag above the para tag, it's the div tag. This div tag has also got no ID, so it keeps the div tag here. So it jumps over here into this, which has again got no ID, so it keeps this here. Similarly, it goes here in this div, it has also got no ID, so it places it here. Finally, it jumps above and finds this division with the ID add-on. So it starts the XPath from this division. So it keeps on traversing above till the time it finds a division with a certain ID or an element with a certain ID and starts to build the XPath from that location. Okay.
So Ashish, if in case we don't have any ID in our page, so in that case we have the same relative and absolute path.
Yeah, suppose again talking about the text like this, one account all of Google. If I try to get the partial XPath for this, you don't get the partial XPath, you get the complete XPath because between the H1 tag and the HTML tag, there is no ID. There is no element having any ID. Okay. So XPath is like something which will identify your object on the web page uniquely. Okay, it's actually easy to calculate using Firebug. Fine. Okay, and I have actually executed everything and I have shown it to you as well. Now, how do you calculate the XPath on Chrome? Fine. In Chrome, you right click on any element, you inspect it. Fine, that element would be highlighted. If you right click on the element, you'll get the option of copying the XPath of that element. You can copy it and you can paste it and use it. Only thing is you'll have to replace the double quotes with single quotes. In IE, there is no option like this. Okay, but you extract the element from one browser, you can use it in the other browser as well. As I told you again, in few minutes back, that the page source remains the same across all the browsers. All the browsers have the same page source. Okay. Right. Fine. Now, what I talked about today was I talked about interfaces, right? Usages of interfaces in Selenium and all. I talked about page source analyzing in a Chrome IE, what is a tag attribute, ID attribute, and I talked about web element interfaces. I built some basic scripts. And I talked about little bit about XPaths, which I will be talking about in the next class as well. Fine. Okay. So we will stop here. Okay. I think it's